Mexico and Canada have recently taken a decisive step in launching a boycott of U.S. products. This move is expected to intensify the economic challenges that were already worsened by policies set during Donald Trump's administration. A key factor behind this decision is the belief that Trump's tariff measures, which were intended to protect certain industries but also cause disruptions, are placing heavy pressure on global markets. Consequently, fears of an economic downturn have risen among investors, contributing to a slump in stock markets worldwide, with the U.S. market facing some of the most significant drops. As noted by Eagle Discovery, the ongoing trade disputes and retaliatory actions have deeply affected numerous sectors, including the consumer goods industry. Large corporations, particularly global brands like Walmart, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, KFC, Starbucks, Domino's, and Pepsi, are bearing the brunt of the boycott. These companies, with a significant presence in both Mexico and Canada, are experiencing a drop in sales as consumers in these nations increasingly avoid American brands in protest. This economic fallout has added to the instability of the U.S. economy, raising concerns about potential long-term effects on both businesses and consumers. The boycott highlights not only rising geopolitical tensions, but also growing doubts about the effectiveness of Trump's trade strategies. This has left investors and businesses navigating an uncertain financial future. The situation has sparked discussions on the need for a more balanced approach to global trade, one that emphasizes diplomatic solutions and international collaboration over tariffs and isolationist policies. This economic boycott encourages consumers to steer clear of U.S.-based stores such as Target, Walmart, Home Depot, and Starbucks. In response to U.S. economic dominance, both Canada and Mexico are focused on boosting their economies by promoting domestic products and lessening their dependence on American brands. People are actively sharing alternatives to U.S. goods, and Canada has introduced an app designed to help shoppers determine whether a product is made in Mexico, or the U.S. social media platforms and apps are also playing a significant role in supporting locally produced items, urging consumers to back their domestic industries. While it remains a challenge to confront the U.S. economy, the boycott movement is steadily gaining ground, particularly against American fast food chains. Slogans like "Consume 100% Mexican-made products" are gaining traction. The aim is to promote economic self-sufficiency and bolster the local economies of Mexico and Canada by decreasing their reliance on U.S. corporations. Coca-Cola has become the primary target of controversy, facing significant backlash and a widespread boycott. The protests began after a series of incidents surrounding the company's treatment of its workers. Specifically, hundreds of Mexican workers were laid off from one of its bottling plants in Texas, sparking major outrage. These workers, who had been employed for varying lengths of time, were dismissed without sufficient severance pay or any clear explanation. The situation escalated when it was revealed that Coca-Cola had reported these workers to U.S. immigration authorities, leading to their deportation. This move sparked further outrage among labor rights activists, human rights groups, and local communities. Critics argued that this action was not only unethical in handling labor disputes, but also an exploitation of the workers' vulnerable status. The incident highlighted wider issues surrounding labor rights, immigrant workers, and the responsibilities of multinational corporations in perpetuating poor working conditions. The company faced intense public criticism, and numerous consumers and activist groups began calling for a global boycott, encouraging people to stop purchasing Coca-Cola products as a form of protest. The boycott has expanded to include companies like Amazon, Google, Meta, McDonald's, and Walmart, which have been accused of reducing Latino worker quotas and supporting Trump's tariffs. These companies have faced criticism for discriminating against Latino workers and backing trade policies that harm low-income communities. The boycott targets these businesses for their role in promoting unfair labor practices and supporting controversial political agendas, with calls for them to reassess their policies and take responsibility for their impact on workers and consumers. Moreover, all of Trump's business partners are facing significant financial setbacks alongside him. The 5 wealthiest billionaires in the U.S., including Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, and Jeff Bezos, are seeing their fortunes diminish. These figures, once at the top of the financial world, are experiencing a decline in wealth due to various factors, including market fluctuations, controversies surrounding their business dealings, and the broader economic impact of political tensions tied to Trump's policies. As an activist in favor of the boycott explained, these billionaires only understand one language: money. For them, financial losses are the most effective way to grab their attention and send a message. The activist emphasized that hitting them where it hurts, in their wealth, is the only way to make them listen to the concerns and demands of the Mexican people and marginalized communities affected by their actions and policies. Donald Trump has long advocated for companies to retain their operations within the U.S. in an effort to revive domestic manufacturing and protect American jobs. However, his strategy of imposing tariffs on imported goods has had an unintended consequence, pushing numerous companies to relocate their production outside the U.S. A major beneficiary of this trend has been Mexico. The tariffs have made manufacturing in Mexico more appealing to businesses looking to avoid the high costs associated with bringing goods into the U.S. due to the newly established trade barriers. Mexico offers significant advantages, including lower labor costs and favorable trade agreements, such as the USMCA, United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, which replaced NAFTA and provides improved terms for cross-border trade. These benefits, combined with the tariff-driven increase in production expenses in the U.S., have enticed many companies to move or expand their manufacturing operations south of the border. Rather than achieving his goal of strengthening U.S. manufacturing, Trump's tariffs have inadvertently shifted production to Mexico, making it a more attractive destination for investors and companies looking to lower costs. This shift has, in turn, weakened the U.S. industrial sector in certain areas, while reinforcing Mexico's role as a key manufacturing hub in North America. The U.S. boycott against American companies could ultimately serve to strengthen Mexico's domestic market, creating opportunities for local businesses to scale up production and expand their market share. As consumers increasingly turn to Mexican-made goods in response to the boycott, domestic companies stand to benefit from the surge in demand, which could enable them to grow and potentially compete more effectively with major U.S. multinational corporations. Moreover, the boycott and the wider shifts in economic dynamics may stimulate the creation of new businesses in Mexico, contributing to a more diverse economy and fostering a culture of entrepreneurship. These emerging companies may challenge the dominance of established U.S. firms, fostering a more competitive business environment within Mexico. Additionally, Trump's tariffs could lead to a reduction in the cost of various goods in Mexico, particularly in industries such as construction. For instance, tariffs on imported steel could drive down the cost of construction steel within Mexico, benefiting the local construction sector by lowering material costs and making projects more affordable. This could provide Mexican companies with a competitive edge, especially in industries where materials like steel are essential, and contribute to stronger economic growth within the country. The tariffs imposed on steel and aluminum have significantly impacted the economies of both Mexico and Canada, generating millions of dollars in revenue for these countries. As U.S. companies confront higher costs for these materials, many have turned to Mexico and Canada as alternative sources, where production costs are generally lower and trade agreements such as the USMCA offer more favorable terms. This shift has allowed manufacturers in both nations to benefit from the U.S. tariffs, boosting their industries and opening new opportunities for export. However, while Mexico and Canada are reaping the benefits, the tariffs have led to increased production costs in the U.S., particularly in sectors like automobile manufacturing. As the prices for steel and aluminum rise, U.S. car manufacturers face higher costs, which are often passed on to consumers through increased vehicle prices. As a result, Americans are paying more for cars, while neighboring countries profit from the tariffs, enhancing their positions in global markets. These unintended consequences underscore the complex dynamics involved in trade policy and its impact on both domestic and international economies. In addition to the economic shifts caused by the tariffs, Canada and Mexico have taken a more direct approach to express their discontent with U.S. trade policies by establishing a food blockade. This blockade targets U.S. agricultural exports, restricting the flow of products like soybeans, meat, and dairy into their markets. The move is seen as a response to the economic harm caused by the tariffs, particularly on steel and aluminum, and is intended to send a strong message to the U.S. about the consequences of its trade policies. This trade blockade could potentially expand beyond North America, with Europe already taking action by imposing a 200% tax on all whiskey produced in the U.S. This steep tariff is part of ongoing tensions between the U.S. and European Union, exacerbated by trade disputes over various industries. As more countries enact retaliatory measures, the scope of the trade conflict could widen, causing ripple effects on global markets. The combination of food blockades and punitive tariffs could disrupt supply chains, raise costs for consumers, and lead to broader economic consequences for U.S. businesses operating internationally. This commercial blockade has caused significant chaos among consumers, particularly in the U.S., as it has disrupted the flow of essential goods. Nearly 50% of the vegetables and fruits sold in U.S. supermarkets are sourced from Latin America, and the blockade has severely limited the availability of these products. As a result, prices have skyrocketed over the past month, with everyday staples like tomatoes, avocados, and bananas becoming much more expensive. For example, the price of avocados, which are a common ingredient in many American households, has more than doubled, leaving consumers struggling to afford them. Similarly, the cost of tomatoes has risen sharply, affecting both home cooks and restaurants that rely on fresh produce. These price hikes have not only made it more difficult for families to stick to their grocery budgets, but have also led to wider inflationary pressures on food prices, contributing to growing economic strain. The blockade highlights the delicate nature of international trade and its direct impact on consumers, making it clear that disruptions in supply chains can quickly lead to widespread consequences for everyday life. As a result of the rising prices in U.S. supermarkets, there has been a noticeable shift in consumer behavior. Mexican supermarkets are seeing a surge of American customers who are crossing the border to take advantage of the lower prices on fruits, vegetables, and other goods. The food blockade and soaring prices in the U.S. have made it more cost-effective for many Americans to shop in Mexico, where the same products are often significantly cheaper. At the same time, U.S. retail stores like Walmart and Target are facing noticeable emptiness, with fewer customers making purchases due to the high costs of everyday items. Many Americans are opting to buy essentials in neighboring countries or exploring alternative options for their shopping needs. This shift in consumption not only highlights the growing price disparity, but also underscores the growing impact of the trade disruptions on everyday American consumers. With increasing costs at home, many are forced to adapt, seeking out more affordable alternatives in nearby countries like Mexico. The assertion that Walmart stores are completely empty is not substantiated by current evidence. While it's true that recent trade tensions and tariffs have impacted the availability and prices of certain goods, including fresh fruits and vegetables, there's no indication of widespread emptiness in Walmart stores. Additionally, the claim that a basic basket costs $500 in the U.S. and $200 in Mexico is an oversimplification and doesn't account for various factors such as product selection, quality, and regional price differences. Cross-border shopping from Texas and California to Mexico for groceries has been a long-standing practice due to price differences. But this doesn't reflect a complete depletion of stock in U.S. stores. It's essential to rely on comprehensive data and reports when assessing such claims. Economists agree that the crisis triggered by Trump's policies is still in its early stages, and the full economic consequences will continue to unfold in the coming months. Prices are expected to keep rising due to inflationary pressures, disruptions in supply chains, and a fluctuating global market. As a result, many experts predict that the U.S. could enter a full-blown recession by June, ushering in a period of significant economic slowdown. This downturn is likely to affect businesses, households, and governments, creating widespread challenges both in the U.S. and globally. Amidst this scenario, discussions have been growing around the potential consequences of a boycott by Mexico and Canada against large U.S. corporations. The idea of economic retaliation has sparked debate, with some seeing it as a necessary step to protect regional economies and assert sovereignty in response to unfavorable policies. However, others caution that such actions could escalate tensions and harm workers and consumers, possibly backfiring on the countries involved. What are your thoughts on this? Do you believe the boycott could be an effective strategy, or would it only escalate the economic difficulties for everyone? Leave your opinion in the comments.